Now you might look at this sponge and go, that's going to be perfect for doing the washing up. I, however, am looking at this sponge right now and thinking that's going to be perfect for a close-up photo or a close-up video. This is what we're going to use, this setup here, to try and take a photo of it and get nice and close and have a nice steady shot. Let me show you how I've set it up. Under here I've got some books, I've got some black paper just to go on top. Not that that's going to be in shot, it's just to keep things tidy. My phone is on this tripod mount and the sponge just sits. There we go, the sponge just sits on here. And the idea is that the tripod and this setup with the books is going to make sure that both the sponge and the phone stay nice and steady. There's no unintentional movement going to creep in, and the phone is nice and close as well. We are framed up on the sponge. The camera is nice and close to where the sponge is, only 10 centimeters away or something. But what I'm going to do is just punch in. There's a 2x zoom here, and that has now really made these indentations even more pronounced, which I think creates a really interesting shot. In addition, I'm just going to tap to lock focus first of all, because we are working in such tight quarters. The phone was hunting a little bit because there is a little bit of depth here with these holes. I've also got my little light source here, and you'll see what the plan is. As I move the light source around, even though the sponge is staying in the same position and so is the phone, it's the shadows and the depth in those indentations that's creating this really interesting sense of movement. And you can see the shadows moving from one side as well to the other. You can see the depth, you can see the fibres that are lower down towards the centre of the sponge. Each have their moment as the light shines past them. Now, one thing to note is what you don't want to do is to get your light too close, like this, for example. This is too bright, the camera can't cope with it, and it blows out. You lose all the definition. So either turn down the light on your light source or just move it further away. That there's good for me. So we've done a few passes of that. We can cut out the bit that we want. And what I'm going to do now is, when we tapped and hold, that locked the focus. But what you can also do is tap and hold to lock the exposure. And it's the default exposure right now, and that's how bright the image is. I'm just going to tap, hold, and then pull down and adjust the exposure. And you see the image is now going much darker. And my thinking is that that's going to make the impact that introducing the light has even more profound in the video. Oh yeah, there we go. So because the default image is much, much darker, the light has much more of a dramatic effect as I move it around. Let's just try moving up and down. Get a few different effects here. And then left to right. And different speeds I think are good to experiment with as well. And try going back to the beginning of where your move started, because on some social media platforms it might loop, you might have like a boomerang option or something. So just give yourself a few options on how you might choose to post this. How about this halo effect of going around in one direction and then going around in the other. There we go. Super. Lots of options there. Let's see how they came out. When you're this tight on an image, you lose a sense of what it is. These could be anything. It could be cells down a microscope, or they could be bubbles in a piece of bubble wrap. There's a lot of texture that we're seeing here and a lot of depth that you don't see until the light gets introduced. And you can see I'm now moving the light across the frame. And while it's interesting, just when the light is above it, it's just a bit too bright for me. You start to lose some of that definition. I like the energy that bringing the light across creates, but I'm just a bit overexposed at the top there. Just a bit more than might be ideal. This image here starts a lot darker. I pulled the auto exposure down, but you can see when the light comes in, it creates even more drama. You're going from quite a dark starting point to something that's quite bright. You can see where the light is casting these shadows almost in this kind of uniform randomness across all of these cells, all of these bubbles, all of these indentations really in the sponge. And just by moving from one side to the other with the light, you might be able to loop that video on a social media platform and create this never-ending animation.